Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reading Taking Hold by Francisco Jiménez from Migrant Childhood to Columbia University. We are going to be reading chapter 13 today, and the chapter is called So Far Yet So Close. It's on page 102. Let's get started. By the middle of spring, campus life returned to normal. Classes resumed after being canceled for a week during the riots, which resulted in the suspension of 20 protesters, including Mark Rudd, and the cancellation of the plan to construct the gym. Political demonstrations were now confirmed to the Sundial area. In a few days after finals, I would be going home for the summer. I could hardly contain my excitement to see Laura and my family again and to get married. What kept me going during those long and lonely months were the letters I received from my mother, Roberto, and Darlene, and Laura. The expected visit from Laura during the Christmas holidays and occasional phone calls. Unfortunately, my hope for spending time with her that Christmas, which I had anticipated like a child, vanished when she canceled her trip a few days before she was to come to New York. I had arranged with Columbia's housing office for her to stay in a guest room in a woman's residence hall. Laura wrote a letter telling me that that her maternal grandparents, who took care of her and her sister after Laura's mother died, had told her that it was not proper for her to visit me, as we were not yet married. They were concerned about what people might think. How could Laura and Francisco spend the holidays together without supervision? I was crushed, but I understood her grandparents' reasoning. My parents would have done the same thing. They were very protective of my sister and did not allow her to date. Even though she was a teenager, my father was less strict with us boys. He allowed my older brother and me to go out once a week when we were in our late teens, as long as we abided by his midnight curfew. I called Laura that evening after reading her letter. She was upset and painfully apologetic. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice cracked. "No need to apologize, I understand perfectly." I said, "Of course I am as disappointed as you are, but we have to obey them, even if we disagree with them, out of respect." "I knew you'd understand," Laura said. "I feel the same way. That's why I didn't argue with them. My grandparents said you'd be terribly angry with them, that you would try to convince me to come visit you anyway. They'll be surprised when I tell them your reaction, but they'll be pleased They'll be pleased." After our call, I wrote Laura a brief note. Our hearts one, they pain us in their suffering to come together. Just as it was last year, the dorm was like a tomb on Christmas Day, but I felt less lonely this time. I went to Mass and to the movies to see In the Heart of the Night. I spent the rest of Christmas break working on my thesis and preparing for finals. Laura and I wrote to each other at least once a week, and every time I received a letter from her, it was like getting a Christmas present. We wrote about our college days when we studied and worked together in the language lab, took walks around the Mission Gardens, and played the nickel pinball machine at the smoke shop near the university. We also shared ideas about having children and raising them to be kind, loving, generous, compassionate, and respectful, and about providing them with a good, stable home and a good education. Laura wrote about her classes for her teaching credentials and the challenges and joys of student teaching, and about going with Wanda to look for a wedding dress. I mailed her information about teaching positions in New York City. She sent me pictures of different silverware patterns and asked me to help her choose one. "Whatever you pick is fine with me," I wrote. Growing up, we used tortillas for silverware. Besides our weekly letters, Laura and I talked on the phone at least twice a month in the beginning, but thanks to the kindness of a telephone operator, more often as time passed. I always called Laura from the same booth in Hartley Hall in the late evenings when the rates went down. I would dial for operator assistance and deposit $1.25 in change for the first 3 minutes. I tried to limit our conversations to that amount of time. However, I lost track of time on one occasion when Laura and I were talking about whom we should invite to our wedding. The operator interrupted us in the middle of our conversation and said I had 15 seconds left and I needed to deposit another $1.25 for the next 3 minutes if I wished to continue. I told her I did not have any more change. She must have heard the frustration in my voice. She offered to bill me for the rest of the call beyond the 3 minutes. I thanked her and gave her my name and address so she could send me the bill. Days later, I called Laura. I paid for the initial 3 minutes, ran overtime, and asked the operator to bill me for the remainder of the call. To my surprise, I never got a bill for either of the 2 calls, nor for the overtime calls I made after that. I had no idea who this operator was, but each time I called, she greeted me and asked me how I was doing. One time I placed a call to Laura's parents' phone because she had gone home for the weekend. After I dialed, the operator came on and said, "This isn't the number you've been calling. I hope you're not calling a different girl." "I'm calling my fiance at her parents' home," I responded, laughing. "Just checking," she said. "Please deposit $1.25 for the first 3 minutes." I smiled to myself and thanked her. Underlying our letters and phone conversations was the frustration we both felt about not being able to put into words what we felt for each other. "You make me feel like April after the rain or the sunshine at 7 a.m. in the morning," Laura wrote. "The closer the ends of the year gets, the more impatient I become for the day when the words will no longer be necessary. I too longed for that day. It was soon to come." And that is the end of chapter 13. Hope you enjoyed it and tune back in for chapter 14 soon.